Bloody hell, it's on. I've got to go. Right, I've got to go immediately.
Sorry, excuse me, hang on. I've got to take this. Hello? Yeah, I'm busy. No, I'm busy. I'm busy. I'm with Linda. Yes, Linda. No, I can't. I can't. Tell him I can't. What, Sydney's Battlefield Challenge? I'll be right there.
Got your belt on?
Strapped in,
Right.
ready to go.
Okay,
Do you know
well,
where we're going?
yes, I do. I have got, put it in the sat-nav, all I have got are coordinates for a map reference, and I have put it in my sat-nav, and it looks to me like it's near Grimsby. Now I don't even know where that is, but we're heading up, we're going to be heading up the A1, so we're going to go across, I think we'll go across to the Black Cat, north of Bedford, and head up from there. But Grimsby. Now I have been buying, as you know, a load of regimental histories for Normandy, anticipating going to Normandy. But Grimsby, I can only think maybe English Civil War.
Well,
what about some of Sidney's Flouncy wars? Did they?
Oh no, he hasn't set us up for the Lace Wars.
Anybody invade Grimsby in the Lace Wars?
That would be tedious if he's done that.
What about Hartlepool for a monkey hanging?
Yeah, it could be. That was going through my head actually, that we could end up in Hartlepool. It's got to be something English Civil War-y, because what else?
Or Dark Ages.
Really?
That area is where the Saxons first arrived, but how much of that is going to be left? And what's the battle we're going to design is going to be a green field with 30 blokes on each side.
So it could be, well, it could be ducks. I know Sydney's really keen on getting us back into a bit of ducks. So actually, it could be a Dark Ages thing. Yeah, that would make sense. But that's more archaeology. I mean, there's not many sources we could go to. Well,
maybe there is something there that we don't know about. Maybe he's found out about. Now, for example, when I went to Lincoln a couple of years ago, when my daughter was at university there was an archway there from the 3rd century. Maybe he's found something like that.
Well,
I don't know, a villa that was burnt down by a raiding party or something.
He's bound to have found us something arty-farty to look at, hasn't he? It's going to have some kind of link to his Etruscan red trousers, whatever happens. Sure of that.
It's not going to be normal.
No.
I think we can pretty much assume it's going to be something weird and abnormal. Alright,
well, that'll suit us down to the ground then.
Well, the sat-nav is saying we've got 2 hours 15 minutes to get to Grimsby.
He hasn't given me anything. Have you got?
No,
has he given
I got a message on my phone. Your challenge is Sydney's Battlefield Challenge is about to start. Meet me at these map coordinates. And as I say, when I put them in the sat-nav, it's somewhere near Grimsby.
Well, it's going to be quite a drive.
It is. And then, where are we going to be? Yorkshire, or who knows? I mean, let's hope it's somewhere near Grimsby, because I don't, I hope he's
Have you ever been to Grimsby?
No, I don't even know where it is.
I don't know where it is.
I know it's on the east coast.
Yeah.
My father was based on an aerodrome somewhere near there.
We can probably get some good fish and chips
in
Grimsby.
43, probably. Okay, well, here we go. Let's. Our challenge is to find Grimsby.
Let's put some music on, shall we?
Yeah. This is the point. My God. That can't be it.
Well, gentlemen, you found the location, I see.
Sydney.
Well,
What is this?
Well, the volcano's temporarily unavailable, but I see you found my new secret lair.
Well, it's not that secretive. At least it's private.
Certainly private. Well, here we go. I've got you your instructions. Nick,
Sydney's battlefield.
open that up.
I should read this.
Yeah.
You talk lots about Market Garden and the fighting at Eindhoven, Sonnebridge, Nijmegen and Arnhem, but there is one important location of the fighting in Holland that I haven't heard you mention. I want you to put your best foot forward and go to Holland to research the fighting around the town of Best.
Why are we in Grimsby?
That is a good question. Why are we in Grimsby?
Well, that's where my secret lair is.
There's nowhere near Holland.
Well, what's that got to do with anything? You've got a car, you can drive.
Well, thanks, mate. Right, okay, and anyway, it says, not only that, but I'd like you to come back with a workable scenario for chain of command that will allow us to refight one of the key actions there.
Very important.
Your ferry and hotels are booked. You have 72 hours and your time starts now.
Right, chaps. So you've got 1 hour to select your books from the Lard Island Library, and after that you've got 2 hours to get to the Channel Tunnel and get into Europe.
Well,
But we're going to Holland on the road trip. Why are we in Grimsby? And if we've only got 2 hours, how are we going to get there?
You better drive quickly. This is where my secret lair is.
Oh,
I've got one in Dover.
all right.
Better move on.
Time to go.
Okay. Can I have a lift?
Right, well that's a bit of a shocker, to be honest with you. So much for our discussion of Dark Ages in Yorkshire.
He's got no understanding of basic geography. Why do we go north and then have to go south by hundreds of miles? He's a complete oaf.
Well, he said to me, as we were leaving, that he thought because it was a road trip, we might want to do some driving. That doesn't seem to take into account we've got enough driving to do anyway. I've got to drive all the way through France, Belgium, right the way across Belgium and into Holland. Okay, well, the good news is before we left...
Oh, good news. I'm glad there is something.
Well, before we left, I did actually go through the Lard Island Library and sort out all of the maps by country.
You did. That's going to be helpful, actually.
Well, actually what I did was I put Belgium and Holland together as a Low Countries pile.
Yeah.
So we can go through that. Now I'm just trying to think. I know we've got a map of Valkenswaard. I know I've got a map of Dunkirk, which is no help at all.
Well,
I think I've got maps of Eindhoven, so let's just hope that's on there.
Yeah, it's a bit further north, so of course Best is to the west of Son, and Zon is to the north of Eindhoven.
Yeah.
So it's whether or not it covers that part of the countryside, really, because the canal goes across at Son around to Best. So there's a canal crossing at Best.
Yeah. Now the only thing
I
I really know about Best is that it was an area where the Americans were sucked into the fighting there, and it just seemed to get a bigger and bigger battle, and more troops were siphoned into it, and that was a problem because that left Club Route, Hell's Highway, whatever you want to call it, potentially unguarded. So that's pretty much all I know about Best. But I suppose at least it's a starting point. Now I'm sure we're going to have quite a few books in the I know we're going to have books in the Lard Island Library that are going to help us, not least the Battlefield Walking books.
Yeah, they're going to be really helpful. It's 101st Airborne, so it's well and truly in their area.
Yeah.
It's not the 506, but it might be something like the 502nd Parachute Infantry that are at Best. and it gets messy. You know classically in the Bridge Too Far film, it's where the James Caan bit happens. Pretty much around there with the guy. There was a story about the officer
they're building a Bailey bridge.
No, there's a story about the officer who gets shot in the head, and the sergeant takes him to the hospital and says, holds the surgeon at gunpoint to make him do the surgery. Do you remember that in the film?
No, I can't remember.
Okay, well that'll be a part of the film. That's around the fighting about best. So I'd be interested to know whether that's a true story or whether that's completely made up for the film.
Yeah,
but it's not an area where a lot of the books focus, because of course it's seen as being a bit off to the left. So he's thrown us a bit of a curveball, really, as little Sid.
Little Sid the geographer.
Yeah.
Marco Sidney. Okay, all right. Well, let's get back to Lard Island, and we've got an hour. The issue is now, I think it's going to be the middle of the night in terms of by the time we get away.
We get on the
and the ferries.
It's going to go down well. But yes, it will be. Yeah.
Hopefully, the ferry ticket is sort of one of the open-ended ones where you just turn up. But that we'll find out.
Well, I'm sure he's spared no expense for us. And I hope I've got enough of my overnight bag. At least it's not going to be too muddy, I don't think. Hopefully.
No.
And the key thing, of course, will be how much it's changed in the last 70 years.
Yeah.
If he sent us to somewhere that's a residential built up area.
A lot of Eindhoven is. I mean,
exactly,
the good thing is we have seen Son, and we know that where although it has expanded, you can still identify exactly where you are and see what happens. So hopefully we're going to get a similar thing at best, because I think the fact that it's over the canal means that whilst Eindhoven has expanded, it's tended to expand up to the canal rather than beyond it. So okay, let's get cracking. A long drive back, maybe time for a quick Burger King.
He's at the Golden Arches, I see.
Right, okay, come on. What I did before I got the call from Sid is I sorted out all the maps into nationality order. So hold on, I've got Germany. I put Belgium and Holland together.
That's what.
It's a starting point, mate.
Yeah.
I don't know precisely.
Well, you work out what you've got.
Yeah.
I'll check the books.
Yeah, you do that.
Okay.
Right. Well, I've obviously sorted this well because this is the south of France. But okay, that's Overloon, Antwerp, Roermond, that's Belgium. This is Valkenswaard. Do we want Valkenswaard?
Valkenswaard depends how far.
Valkenswaard is the top of the map. This is from the group
that's
barrier.
The breakout. Yeah. Well, we might be glad to have it, but I don't think we're going to need it necessarily.
Boxtel.
Boxtel could be the one. Is that too far?
St Owen Road.
Too far north.
Okay. I'll take it anyway because it's nearby, isn't
St
it?
Owen Road is on there, so this is 101 airborne territory we're in now.
This is St Hubert, that is over in the Ardennes. That, in fact, that's Bastogne, which is probably why those two are together.
Maybe you'll send us there next time.
Maybe. Vagel. Now Vagel's in the area.
Vagel is...
isn't it? Just to the north.
So Vagel is between St Owen Road and Grave, so it's actually on the slightly east of that one. But again, put it in the...
Put it in the pile to take. That's Moerdijk, which is no good. More Bastogne, Houffalize. Where's this? Wiltz, again that's Ardennes. Haasbroek, that's 1940. Cassel. That's 1940. It's on the way to Dunkirk. Brussels.
No.
Oorschot.
Eindhoven.
Best. Eindhoven.
And Sombridge as well is on that map.
Right, fabulous.
That's the main one we're going
That's the main one.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Does that have the...
For a quick getaway?
Yeah. Nice beach on the way home, maybe.
Arnhem. German map of Arnhem. We're not going that far.
Well, sadly, no, won't get to go that far.
Kortrijk, that's Belgium. We're not going that far.
So that one is going to be the one to use.
That is the kiddie.
So these are. So this is Sombridge here.
Yeah.
So north of Sombridge, I know the landing. It's one I know least about.
Boxtel. Boxtel's the next map.
Landing ground there.
Right, fabulous. So look,
Yes, the one.
Son. So we've got the whole of that area. And where's the other one? Vagel. Vagel's off to the east of that.
Yeah.
Okay, we probably won't need it, but these are the two, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And so really, I mean, we've been to Zon. We know that. But this is going to push us further west to Best.
You know what they say, mate? The Zon always shines on Lard TV.
I'm sure it does.
Right. Okay, books.
Okay, I'm glad you think that was funny. Yeah, well, I've gone straight for that one because I know that's going to be brilliant for us.
Autumn Gale.
Yeah.
Autumn Gale sounds like she's probably a singer from 1978.
But that's Camp Group Chill, who we know were active in this area.
What about Camp Group Volta?
That's 107. So they're the guys
they're
who
active at
Son Bridge, so they're probably going to be helpful to have.
We'll take it.
Okay, for that one as well. Yeah. Have you got the Battlefield series?
Highway, Hell's Highway.
Here we go. Yeah.
Here.
That's
Hell's Highway. These are my
Highway.
Arnhem ones. We don't need the island. We don't need Arnhem. We don't need the landing grounds. Arnhem landing grounds.
No.
Do we need Nijmegen?
Well, anything that's 101st Airborne. So
Nijmegen.
if you've got, have you got? It doesn't. It never snows in September.
Yeah.
Because we've got that one. There it is.
Ah, right. Well spotted.
That
And
one
actually,
might
hold
go
on.
for
I've got some other Arnhem stuff in here. Club Route.
Club Route's 30 cool. Yeah, probably because they certainly pushing up that way, aren't they? So that's going to be of use.
What I've
Bando,
also got,
Mark Bando is the guy who writes about 101 Airborne. Have you got all the guys from him? There is a book about 101st Airborne. That's the one, Vanguard of the Crusade. So something in there probably around Best.
That's my oversized stuff. I've got these. I've got this video, Hell's Highway.
Yeah.
Which is by Pen and Sword.
Yeah, well, I've seen that. That will cover this. This is the Tim Saunders and his guys that write the.
And there's two books. Actually, you lent them to me.
Yep.
And
so these Lost at Nijmegen and A Little Sense of Urgency, they are handy and easy to take as well. They will cover it because they cover the whole campaign.
I have got a book written by a guy in the 82nd Airborne.
If he's in the 82nd Airborne, he's not going to be in our area of operation.
Sorry, 101st.
Is that the Webster book?
No, it's September Hope. I have got a book by...
You've got the Parachute Infantry book by Webster.
Yeah, I've got that.
So
That
that's
book,
the guy.
September Hope, was recommended to me by John Gethart in Arizona, a good friend who really rates that. And I hate to say it, I haven't read it yet. Parachute Infantry.
This is the book by David Webster, who is the guy out of Band of Brothers. Now they weren't at Best,
Right.
but they did push down through Son, so there might be something in there.
A Street in Arnhem, Men at Arnhem, In the Shadow of Arnhem, none of these are relevant. We've got Setcraft, we've got the Unterführerschule Arnheim, not relevant. Arnhem Diary, that's at Arnhem obviously. B Company arrives, Arnhem. Freddy Goff Specials at Arnhem, that's all very much Arnhem. Anything oversized? Oh yeah. Operation Market Garden Then and Now.
So this is the 2-volume set.
Yeah.
We've spoken about this on the Oddcast, and this is very well thumbed, and it will cover Best.
Yeah, it is very well thumbed.
It will really help us.
Okay, I'm just seeing if there's anything else down in oversized. I don't think there is. Oh, here's a fun one for you, mate. Battleground General, Arnhem 1944. We could play it in the car. It's Do you turn left at the crossroads? If so, go to chapter 37.
Excellent, good. Well,
so we'll see if you can play it both ways, and I know you like a bit of that, mate.
Absolutely. And, you never know how it's going to end up that way.
It's
this is going to be good.
A bit of jolly fun after a few beveragios.
Right. We've got some reading to do, Sidney.
That's a nice map. That looks.
So that confirms we want to be where those woods are.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, you have 30 minutes.
All right, Sidney. Pressure's on, Nick.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So that's setting the location for us. We definitely need to take that one.
Yeah.
Let's look in this one, Bando's book. Ooh, okay. 145. Best and St Odin Rhoda.
Right.
Death of Cole.
Right.
This is the guy who wins the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
And this is British Armour connecting up, 15th, 19th Hussars.
Mm.
Okay, so that's definitely got to go with us. And there's a good description of the fighting there.
Wonder if we can get anything on the 15th, 19th. I wonder if their war diary's online.
Yeah, definitely worth a look, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely worth a look. Okay, that's great. That's a good one. That's going to be in there too. This book, It Never Snows in September. The German side of things.
It's normally pretty good. I think we just have to assume that one is going to cover it, and we just take it and read it in the car because we haven't got time to bugger about now because we are under pressure.
That one's going to be the same because we know the Camp-Proof Chiller right in the thick of it.
That is absolutely got to be covering it. So again, I think we just chuck that in without thinking about it. Same with the Market Garden books. Although there's 2 books in that Market Garden Then and Now series. Be worth looking to see which one covers it and which one doesn't. So there we go, best.
Okay, that's right. So that's confirming everything about where we want to go. So that's definitely going, that one. And then these 2, these are absolutely the go-to books. It just depends which one of the two.
Which one of the two
covers it the best. So it's not quite sure where the distinction falls. 101st Airborne Division takes Eindhoven 230. So it's going to be in this book probably, isn't it? Just about Eindhoven and north.
Right, yeah.
Okay, in here we will find it.
Best.
Here we go.
Okay.
With the blown bridge.
Yeah.
And
was the bridge blown there then? I
yeah,
know
the
that.
Germans blew the bridge there,
Right.
but not initially.
Okay.
The Somme Bridge was blown first, and this was blown after that. I know that much.
Yeah.
Here we go. This is the famous story about the cut-off patrol that get isolated down by the bridge.
Okay.
So
I don't know anything about that one because I've been looking more at Arnhem and you've been looking more at the US operations further south.
Yeah, so I know a lot of this stuff, but actually Sidney's thrown us a bit of a curveball because it's, you know, I'm 82nd Airborne is more my bag.
Right.
101st I need to gen up on a bit, so that's going to be great for us to get our teeth into it.
Okay. So the Nijmegen book is 82nd Airborne and Guards Armour Division, so that's probably not going to be it,
we won't
is it?
need that one.
Right.
No. Club route.
Yeah.
It will cover it in there. This book is fairly much an overview, but there might be something in here at best. We'll take it and have a look in the car.
It's a reproduction of a book published soon after the war, or even in the war, isn't it? Because I've got some books from that series.
It is. You can tell from the way the page layout is.
Yeah, I've got some other books from that series on things like the 8th Army and Bomber Command.
And this is covering the whole club route in Europe, you know, 30 Corps in the entire European campaign.
Right.
So the plunge into Holland is only an element of that.
No, sure. So, okay.
Okay, let's just have a quick look maybe to see if it gives us anything interesting to go on. Plunge into Holland. Okay, worth having a read in the car probably to see what we can get from
well, there's no shortage of space in the car, mate, so
no. And then
at least we're not flying.
And then this one, which is a really superb book.
It's a fabulous book. I don't know whether it covers this. I mean, I know this covers the counter-attack at Somme Bridge because I bought that and added that to the library for that reason. Yeah,
well, it's...
and one of the things that book is good at, actually, is the build-up to it and showing which German units are where. So even if we're just picking up certain bits of information, that is such a comprehensive book. Again, it's worth reading in the car on the way, because that's all we're going to have time for.
For sure. There we go. So we've got, again, the best in the area now, best being discussed in here.
Yeah.
And the Cromwells of the Welsh Guards moving through Eindhoven, etc. So
okay, let's get online and see what we can find there. You've got your laptop, I'll go on the desktop, let's see where we end up. There you go.
Okay, so if we look at the map and look at the area around Best and look at what we've got on Google Maps.
Yeah.
It looks like the wooded area there is still
pretty much largely there. There's been some logging there, hasn't there?
But there's a new road there though, that's the new road.
Right.
But the old bridge, the old road is still there.
Is it alongside it?
It looks like there's the old road is alongside it and the new road next to it.
Yeah.
Just not very far from IKEA at Eindhoven, actually, which is
Right.
really good. That's useful.
Well, we can always get a table.
Yeah. To play on, yeah, absolutely.
Or a hot dog. The meatballs.
So actually, it looks like we know most of the drop zones are still in, accessible in good condition.
Right.
Best as a town has grown.
Yeah.
So that's
flipping
not
out.
going to
Yeah.
help us.
That's huge compared to what it was, isn't it?
But
the key main roads, you can still see the key main roads on there, can't you?
Yeah, you can, and the woods
completely
look like they're pretty much unchanged.
Even the rides are the same.
Yeah, yeah. And okay, it looks like there are some memorial in there as well. So actually, that's going to help us give us a start point maybe for some of what we look at. Let's look at what that is.
Okay, Campaign Diary of the 15th 19th is in the Imperial War Museum, but I can't find it for download yet. It's in the National Archives. Diary. Let's just try Diary and PDF. National Archive again. Not having a lot of luck here, and we're limited to the amount of time we can spend doing this. I'll just do 15/19 as ours downloads.
You have 5 minutes remaining, gentlemen.
Right, here we are, the Light Dragoons Regimental Association web page, and we have got History of the 15th, 19th, King's Hussars, 1939 to 45, 21 megabytes. Let's hit download. We got it. We've hit gold. That is a great find. We will be able to read that on the route, so I'll download that now.
And you have 15 seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's time.
Right, Sid. Okay, well, time's up. Let's get this stuff packed up and we're going to be on the road. Nick, if you could grab your bag, shove it in the car, I'll bring these books and maps and let's make a move. I think the important thing that we need to reflect is that we don't just look at the battle for best as though it exists in its own bubble. I think we have to focus on how it relates to the whole of Operation Market Garden.
Yeah, and contextualise it for the overall operation.
If we put it into the context of the bigger picture, at least we understand why it's happening, and then we can try and represent the action there in a scenario that's pertinent to the whole big picture.
Yeah, and from both sides as well. Yeah. So we're not doing it just from the Allied side.
Interesting, actually, while you were excuse me, looking through the books in the library, I was actually continuing to look through on the shelves, and one of the books I put in is the history of the 15th Scottish Division, because in that there's a really detailed account of an attack by a whole brigade of Scottish troops, literally 2 days after the Americans were assaulting that. So here we are, and this is the site of Joe's Bridge, where 30 Corps are forming up, ready to jump off on their advance into Holland and all the way on to Arnhem. Already in the air we have a whole armada of aeroplanes which are there to drop a carpet of airborne troops, which in theory 30 Corps should be able to link up with on its way north through Eindhoven, Nijmegen and all the way to that critical bridge at Arnhem. And this of course is where our journey begins today, following that same route up to Eindhoven and then on to the town of Best to discover what happened there during that week in September 1944 and how it related to the whole Operation Market Garden situation.
Operation Market Garden needs no introduction. The US 101st Airborne were to drop north of Eindhoven, the 82nd south of Nijmegen, and the British 1st Airborne at Arnhem. These forces were then to expand to seize key bridges all along the route, and then British 30 Corps would advance from the south of Valkenswaard, moving rapidly north across this carpet of airborne troops, up to Grave, then on to Nijmegen and across the island into Arnhem itself. But what's less well known is that there were two other corps operating on the flanks. We have 12 Corps operating on the left and 8 Corps on the right, whose job it was to push up, pushing out the shoulders of the salient that was being created in German lines and protecting 30 Corps' route from attack.
Here we are just north of Son in the Sonserheide, an area of heath and agricultural land just a few miles north of the bridge over the Wilhelmina Canal at Son and about 25 miles from Joe's Bridge. Here, 2 of the 3 parachute infantry regiments of the 101st Airborne Division, the 502nd under Colonel Michaelis and the 506th under Colonel Sink, made an almost perfect drop on the afternoon of the 17th of September. So here we are on the afternoon of the 17th of September. The airborne have landed on the landing zones here, 2 drop zones and a landing zone through the middle. Nice clear area within marching distance of the bridge, not too far at all to get down there and to seize the objectives. So what happens is that the 506 infantry are sent this way towards Son Bridge to capture that essential link there. We have another battalion goes up towards St Onenrode in the northeast, and the elements of the 502nd, their objective is to push towards the Best Bridge through these woods and to capture the road that runs from Boxtel through to Eindhoven.
So here we are, this is the bridge at Son. This obviously is not the one that was blown up. This is the key point that the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment needed to capture to enable 30 Corps to cross this bridge and head north to Arnhem. However, within 200 yards of the bridge coming south from the drop zone to the north, the bridge was blown in their faces, creating an obvious problem. At this point, 30 Corps could not pass until the Royal Engineers had constructed a bridge. General Taylor, commander of the unit, had wanted to have a coup de main drop right on the bridge, but was not allowed to do so by the aerial planners. That decision was coming back to haunt them. So, how were they going to get 30 Corps moving with as little delay as possible? The answer, find another bridge.
Behind me here in the distance you can see the woods that mark the direction of Best, and it's in this direction that the men of H Company of the 3rd Battalion of the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment start their journey towards their objective under Captain Jones on the afternoon of the 17th of September. Jones commanded 3 platoons. 1st Platoon under Lieutenant Harper, 2nd Platoon under Lieutenant Wiesabowski, and 3rd Platoon under Lieutenant Duffy. To assist him, Jones was reinforced by a platoon of engineers taken from C Company of the 326th Engineer Battalion and some additional machine guns. As the paratroopers advance on Best, they orientate themselves using the steeple of the church, which you can maybe just see through the gap in the trees behind me. This is an important landmark that's used by the Americans both in their advance and also later on in their withdrawal. So the American paratroopers move off through the lanes towards their various objectives. The men of H Company 502nd push towards Best and the bridge there. Their intention is to use the church tower as a reference point so that they can use this to guide them onto their objective. They desire, of course, is to head south and go southwest towards the bridge, but they get drawn to the east towards the church and the crossroads in the village centre, where they're engaged in a fierce firefight with enemy. Now, their arrival in the village is crucially timed because it coincides with the arrival of a large German convoy bringing men from Boxtel down the main road to reinforce the area. Let's head there now and see what happened. We've moved now to the town of Best. Now, there's been a lot of new development in this town, but we've tried to find a part of it that we can recognise so we can continue some of the story that unfolded here. Behind my left shoulder you can see a roundabout. It's a crucial roundabout. It's a strategic road junction that marks where the road to Eindhoven crosses with the road that goes to St Odenrode over to the east. So to the north there, the road comes in from Boxtel and goes down past the camera towards the canal bridge, and then over here by the Calvary sign the road comes in from St Odenrode, whilst the road on the other side of the roundabout takes you into the town centre of Best itself. So on the afternoon of September the 17th, American paratroopers are pushing in from this direction towards the crossroads into the town to set up their roadblocks. Men of H Company under Captain Jones. They've moved from the drop zones. They're ready to put in position a block on the road. They encounter enemy resistance and get into small arms fire, close quarters stuff with some Germans in the town, which gets quite messy. There's certainly at least one senior platoon sergeant who's killed in that initial burst. And from then the Americans start to deploy their platoons, and Captain Jones puts in a roadblock on this junction. Now, at this crucial juncture, the timings are massively important. Just as the Americans get in place to spring this ambush, this roadblock, a column of German troops comes in from the north. Now, this is a motorised column. The books talk about it being composed of trucks and vehicles towing 20mm cannon. It's also led by a single, unfortunate, solitary German on a motorbike. And he, of course, is in advance of the column, and Captain Jones tells his men to hold their fire so he can maximise his chances of a great ambush. However, such is the heat of action that somebody shoots the motorcyclist early on, and then at that point all hell breaks loose. Jones's company was soon being outgunned, with reports of 20mm flat cannon and even 88mm guns firing direct mode from the petrol station on the edge of the town. Now, the number of Germans here is really quite difficult to ascertain. The books give various sources for this, but most of them seem to agree that there are at least 200 Germans. We don't really know what unit they're from either. It's suggested that these are SS police battalions, and Richard's here. We're going to have a conversation about what these SS guys are like. What kind of unit are we facing here, Rich?
Well, ultimately we don't really know. One of the issues is that this is a period of time where we're pretty much at the end of the great swan that began once the Allies broke out from Falaise in Normandy, and the German units have been falling back in all sorts of bad order. The main unit that's been told to assemble in this area, to defend this area, is the remnants of the 59th Infantry Division. Well, the 59th Infantry Division was only formed in 1944, largely from men who came from Norway and from convalescents, ill men, with some veterans of the Eastern Front. The average age in the 59th Infantry Division was 34 years old, so we're not talking young. The problem they had, they were deployed around Dunkirk, just on the coastal defence duties, and they fell back north along the coast until they fell back to a position to the west of Antwerp. When the British took Antwerp, they're cut off against the coast, and it's only through nighttime use of civilian ferries and Rhine barges that can get men out that they are moved over across the Scheldt and then able to redeploy again at night, because the Allies have total control of the skies, that they're able to redeploy to take up the defence of this area. But they're not here. They're not here when the Americans come in. So in this area there is a camp group commanded by an Oberstleutnant Lenz. Now he has got the remnants of the 723rd Infantry Regiment, and remnants is absolutely the word. There's not a lot of anybody left. but that is reinforced by let the motorbike go, that's reinforced by an SS police battalion, and frankly these are the guys who, if they were on the Eastern Front, we know that they'd be doing some pretty nasty things in villages. The situation's slightly different in the West, that you simply can't go around being that nasty to the same extent, but these are essentially semi-trained paramilitary police whose job all of a sudden is to serve as frontline infantry. We think, and again we haven't gone through the complete research on this because I've been driving all the way here, we really haven't had a lot of chance, but we're going to try and look into it more tonight. We think that they are armed pretty much entirely with rifles, the odd SMG, possibly one MG34 per platoon, maybe even one tripod mounted machine gun per company, which is the type of thing that they are typically armed with. Nevertheless, they are bringing a lot of 20mm cannon that can put in a lot of firepower, and the Germans over in Best have got observers up in the church tower, which is going to give them a lot of options in terms of artillery and mortar support, because they do actually have a reasonable amount of that around. So who exactly it is, we're not entirely sure at the moment, but we know it's Camp Group Lentz on that day. So yeah, but the German on the motorcycle is the most unfortunate guy. In the story it's reported that he stopped dead in the air and the motorbike kept going, and that of course triggered all the guys to jump out of the lorries, and then the amount of firepower that was coming in was pretty overwhelming. It was a situation that meant that the Americans here decided to withdraw. Now on our left here we've got the new dual carriageway main road that's in a big cutting, but originally they would have fallen back about 20 yards from here and just moved across in a ditch across to a point where they would then fall back, which I think we're going to go to next, aren't we, into the Sonscherheide woods.
Having encountered the enemy in the ambush in Best, H Company are beaten back and they head for the safety of the woods of the Sonscherheide down this road. This is the path that they take, and I'm going to take it now. It's only half a mile to the trees. See you there? Outnumbered and outgunned, or at least feeling outgunned, the Americans go firm in these trees behind me. And this is where Cole realises that actually they're overcommitted. Instead of just one company taking this fight, he realises that he needs to commit his entire 3rd Battalion to this engagement. Colonel Cole gets on the radio to Captain Jones and says to him, get your men towards the bridge. So Jones dispatches Wizabowski's platoon, his 2nd platoon, supported by a group of engineers and with some light machine guns, down towards the bridge so that they can capture the crossing against the canal, while the rest of his company goes firm in these trees and tries to hold off the enemy, who are growing in numbers. Wizabowski's men make their way towards the canal. Now, the woods here are crossed with rides, like the one you can see here. And the challenge was that these rides actually had German machine guns far along them on fixed lines, making it quite obviously very difficult to cross. As Wizabowski's men moved south, they become rather stretched out, and he loses some of the unit cohesion, but he does manage to push through, although he continually moved to the left of his route of march. And actually what happens is he therefore diverts slightly further to the east than he would like to be, but nonetheless he makes progress towards the canal. Wizabowski and his men are moving through the woods, constantly being deflected to their left by the enemy encounters on the way. Eventually they come out on the canal bank. Now, sources don't make it clear exactly where this is, but through looking at the maps and understanding the way this battle unfolds, we think it's highly plausible that Wizabowski's men came across this lane and down to this point, which is just across the road from the canal. From here they can move along the canal bank towards the bridge. Wizabowski and his men have come out on the canal line here, probably about half a kilometre from the bridge over in this direction. And what happens here is that they find the canal, they realise that they obviously need to head towards the bridge, and they start to make for that direction. Also worth bearing in mind that as they lead their way along this river, along this water's edge, they actually do encounter on the far bank some armoured cars from the British Army on the 18th that have moved west from Son, and actually they sent some men across the canal to get a first aid kit. So actually the canal here is quite narrow and can be crossed in small boats. You know what, I think even I might better swim across there without too much difficulty, and it just shows that the waterway here is quite narrow. And of course it's also here where later on in the campaign that the Germans are actually throwing hand grenades across the canal. So the canal is actually probably about 40 yards wide. With a good throw you can lob a grenade that distance, and I'm very glad there's nobody over there to lob one at me now. On the evening of the 17th of September, Wisabowski is on the canal bank, actually hugging the canal side of the dike. The Americans push forward very slowly at no more than a crawl until they are much closer to the bridge, something like 50 to 60 yards, which sadly for us is almost exactly where the new main road cuts through the canal. Wisabowski carries out a reconnaissance of the bridge and creeps forward, taking with him one of his scouts, a guy called Joe Mann. The two of them get so close to the bridge that they're actually within the patrol route of the German sentries there, and they have to lay completely still. This goes on for about half an hour, after which the remainder of the platoon start to become restless and a noisy chatter breaks out as they wonder what's happened to Joe Mann and the lieutenant. This noise is heard by the Germans and fire breaks out. Sentries fire on the Americans, and even from across the far side of the canal, Germans are throwing grenades across to where the Americans are. This causes, of course, some consternation amongst the Americans, who break ranks and flee back into the woods. There isn't really much of a firefight here. The German attack surprises the Americans and they pull back. Wisabowski and Mann take advantage of the fight to rejoin their colleagues, but not before the platoon is further reduced in numbers following the excitement of the fight. And although only one man is actually a casualty of the fighting, some unit disintegration occurs, which sees Wisabowski down now to about 18 men. It was raining, and safely in the woods again, Wisabowski digs in for the night. By the night of the 17th, the rest of H Company is dug in on the woods on the edge of the Sonsche Heide. Cole, realising that he needs to support H Company, pushes through the woods with the rest of the battalion, but struggles to make contact with Jones and his men, although they are in radio contact. The accounts speak of how the column that was moving through the woods would do a stop-start manoeuvre, exactly an indication that the head of the column didn't really know where it was headed. Realising that the right flank of Jones's position is actually the weakest, he pulls the rest of 3rd Battalion up on what he believes is Jones's right flank. Cole asks Jones on the radio whether there's any news from the bridge. On hearing there is no news, Cole says, "They've been annihilated without a doubt." And with his leading troops triggering defensive fire from the enemy, Cole and the rest of 3rd Battalion now dig in the trees and bed in for the night. The next day, the 18th of September 1944, was to be an eventful one.
So Nick, there we are, that's the first day. They've come in, they've landed, they've moved out.
Yeah.
How would you summarise what's happened on the 17th?
Well, they're in a bit of a sticky spot. By then, of course, they've tried to get into Best, they've failed to get into Best, they've detached a platoon, that platoon has disappeared, no one knows where that is. H Company have gone firm in the woods, and Cole has tried to push up to be alongside them. But really, back at Regiment, they know they've got a problem. They know there are significant numbers of Germans in Best, and they know they need to do more about that. So Colonel Michaelis decides that he's going to have to put more guys into this fight the following morning.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Now on the 18th of September, Colonel Michaelis, in charge of the 502nd, he's got a problem. The 3rd Battalion under Lieutenant Colonel Cole are basically being held back from Best by the Germans. He can't push in against their superior numbers, so he brings up his 2nd Battalion. The 1st Battalion, don't forget, are over at St Odenrode. They're busy securing the bridges over there, but the 2nd Battalion is free, so he commits D, E and F companies to attack towards Best. Now, you might be able to see some buildings over there in the distance. Those are the buildings on the outskirts of Best. This is the line that the Americans attack from. Across this road here, the Americans form up along this road and they start to attack. It's the 18th of September 1944, and it's from this position here that the guys in D, E and F companies of the 2nd Battalion of the 502nd begin their attack on Best. The companies are in line, 3 companies next to each other, begin their attack across these open grounds. This is agricultural land. The hay in these fields has been harvested and there are haystacks scattered across the landscape. The men, as they advance, do so in skirmish order, using the cover of the haystacks as they advance. Now, of course, haystacks look great. You might want to hide behind them, but they don't stop a bullet. And soon the guys hiding behind these are casualties. Casualties in the fields become high, tracer bullets set the haystacks on fire, and approximately 20% of the unit are taken as casualties in this attack, including 8 officers. So the company takes a bit of a beating here, and they push back. They fail to secure a foothold in Best, and they push back and fall back into the trees alongside Colonel Cole and what remains of his 3rd Battalion. For the moment at least, any attempt to take the town of Best is over. By the afternoon of the 18th of September, 3rd Battalion of 502nd Infantry have gone firm in these woods. They've attempted to push into Best, but have been pushed back into these defensive positions by weight of fire. Overwhelmed by the strong opposition, the Americans call for air support, and one of the very few times in Market Garden where actually direct air support is available to troops on the ground. P-47s come in and they strafe the position. Now, sources conflict a little bit, but there's obviously some element of friendly fire going on here, and although the Americans are using orange recognition panels, some of the fire still falls on their own troops. Lieutenant Colonel Bob Cole, who's in charge of the 3rd Battalion, is a man who you will recognise from the Normandy invasion. This is the guy who leads the bayonet charge at Carentan on the 11th of June 1944. He's very well respected by his men. He's a combat leader, and for that action in Normandy, he's actually recommended for the Congressional Medal of Honor. Now, he is in charge of this battalion at this point. He goes out into the field that's opposite me here to reposition a recognition panel, an orange recognition panel, and as he does so, he is hit in the temple by a sniper's bullet from a building between 100 and 300 yards in this direction. And now we find ourselves at the memorial position that marks the spot closest to where he fell. With Bob Cole's death, his battalion was not going anywhere soon. Major Stopka takes command of the battalion and organises the defence in the woods. Just to my left here, beyond these trees, is the new autobahn motorway road that cuts through much of the position where the best of the best fighting took place. But it's not far from here that Wisabowski's platoon reach on the 18th of September, where they're pushing along the canal line and they're within sight of the bridge. And now, by mid-morning, the Germans are still in possession of the bridge, obviously. Wisabowski and his men can see them, and they see a civilian and another German talking on the bridge. And it isn't long after that that the Germans detonate the charges, and it's about 11 o'clock in the morning of the 18th of September that the Germans blow the bridge at Best. Germans push some men out. Wisabowski, who's actually so far been quite successful at not engaging directly with the enemy, at last engages with them and enters a firefight and kills many Germans. Now, in that engagement, he also loses some men in the confusion, and some of the men that are with him start to drift back through the woods. There is a story running through this American engagement of units losing their cohesion and of elements of platoons disappearing in the confusion of the fight as men just filter back through the trees. At this juncture, Joe Mann, accompanied by another soldier named Hoyle, sneak forward with a bazooka and take out an 88mm flat gun and a German ammunition dump that is up there at a range of about 150 yards. The pair also engage enemy infantry before crawling back to the platoon position. And it's during this action that Joe Mann is shot through both arms.
At the end of the 18th, talk me through where we are. At the end of the 17th, things were not looking great, but where are we? I know that the Americans had an ace up their sleeve with a spare battalion. So what's happened today?
Well, today really things haven't really improved that much. First of all, of course, the bridge has been destroyed. Now, you know, obviously that was an alternative to Son, but now that that's gone, of course, that's no longer there. They haven't been able to push out of the woods. The attack by 2nd Battalion has failed, and they've gone firm in the woods. Wizabowski is still lost on the canal line, and really it doesn't look like there's going to be any way of breaking this German position. On top of that, of course, the Germans are infiltrating into the woods in some numbers.
Which is why Wizabowski is trapped. He's literally, every time, you know, you have to presume he's sending guys out going, can we get north, can we get east? But their passage is being blocked by German parties infiltrating into the woods.
And that's never nice. But he does make contact with some other paratroopers who get to him. But again, once he's fired at, they disappear into the woods again. So he's still very much on his own.
It's a recurring theme, isn't it?
Yeah, he's made contact with some armoured cars on the south side of the canal from the British 30 Corps who have pushed up, and they've sent some medical supplies over to him.
All right. That's the household cavalry, I believe.
That's the household cavalry, and of course they say to him, stay where you are, you know, help will be with you soon. But of course they themselves have to pull off when they're under fire. So he's still on his own on that canal bank. Yeah, it's looking pretty bad even on the 18th for the Yanks. The
interesting thing is that you know, one of the things we haven't touched on is the importance of 88mm guns, which are pretty much littered all over the place, aren't they?
They are.
And not in a pack roll, but they're there because they're there in a flak roll, and there's a lot of bridges. And where you have bridges, you have flak guns to defend them against enemy aircraft. And these again, they're not a frontline pack unit, but they do have a bit of firepower, and they're quite prepared to turn it on infantry targets when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, and it takes a special kind of guy to get up out of a hole and make something special happen in that situation. Under machine gun fire, small arms fire, and ultimately you've got some guy over there with a massive great artillery piece who's also levelling that at you. So yeah, around this area, 18th of September 1944, we'd be better off in the pub.
And on that bombshell, I think maybe we can get ourselves thinking now about tomorrow, the 19th. Let's see what happens there.
By the 19th of September, Wizabowski and his platoon are in a desperate situation. They're not called the Lost Platoon for nothing. By now, they're stuck on their own near the German lines. The German lines are approximately 50 yards, no more, in that position and that direction. The Germans are pushing up all the time. Wizabowski and his men have dwindled in numbers. What started off as more than 40 has gone down to about 14. They're wounded men. Private First Class Joe Mann is one of the scouts in Wizabowski's platoon. He's previously been up to the German positions with the lieutenant to reconnoitre the position. He's subsequently been wounded through both arms and is bandaged up. By now, he and his colleagues are stuck. They're under fire. The Germans are pushing in, and the Germans are launching hand grenades now into their position. Private Mann, as part of that attack, notices that a grenade has fallen into their position, and helpless as he is with his arms bound, throws himself back on the grenade and sacrifices himself for his colleagues. The end for the platoon is nigh, and it isn't long before the Germans push up and Wizabowski and the rest of his men go into captivity. But they're only there for a short time. An advance from the Americans frees him fairly quickly, and they're soon back with their friends.
Let's talk about the Germans. It's really quite important to get a grip on exactly who's fighting here and what they're doing. Originally, there's a camp group in this area called Camp Group Rink, as in ice rink, but that's not his name. His name's Berthold, and he's an Oberstleutnant, and he was an officer of the Grenadier Regiment 723. That is the basic bones of the camp group, but that is strengthened with an SS Polizei battalion, the 3rd SS Polizei battalion, who, as I think we've already talked about, are drastically underarmed in terms of what they've got and also undertrained. And they are left holding the line in the first instance. On the 18th, Rink is killed, and he's replaced by a guy of the same rank, a lieutenant colonel, whose surname is Lentz. And Lentz is a bit shaky, and he immediately talks about withdrawing and pulling out of Best, which would have been a huge coup for the Allies if he had done so. If he'd done that, then there's no doubt the airborne would have gone in there and held the position and widened out the shoulders to protect 30 Corps' route without any problems. However, his Corps commander makes it perfectly clear to him that he is not to do that, and that help is on the way in the form of the 59th Infantry Division under General Popper. Now, Popper is commanding what is apparently a strong division at this point in time, in as much as it has 5 infantry regiments as part of it. It's got Grenadier Regiment 1034, Grenadier Regiment 1035, 1036. It's got a Fusilier Battalion 59, which is in there. But you've got to remember, of those Grenadier regiments, each of the 3 battalions is only around 150 to 180 men each. So a whole regiment is smaller than a US airborne battalion. On top of that, you've got an artillery regiment which has got 30 guns. And they've got a great position over in the church tower, and there's also a monastery which has got its own tower, which allows the Germans to cover pretty much visibly the whole area around Best, and they use that very, very cleverly to deploy their mortars and artillery. But they have to be careful because they're unsurprisingly low on ammunition at this point in time. There's also a Panzerjäger Abteilung which apparently has 18 guns. Now, at no point in this battle is there any report of any anti-tank guns taking part in the battle. There are accounts of Stugs firing airbursts rather wastefully early on in the battle, but we never actually see them rolling into action in the classic Stug armoured AFV type role. So I think we have to draw a conclusion from that, especially as the battle progresses, that those Stugs have maybe run out of ammunition or are somewhere else. Equally, I wouldn't be surprised if quite a few of them had not found their way across the Scheldt because of shipping problems at this stage. The important thing that we have to remember is that we're looking at this action from a point of view where the Germans have got potential to attack as well as defend. And for the Germans, the key moment for them comes on the 19th, and at that point in time, the 1034th and 1036 regiments have arrived as the front-running troops of the division have arrived in Best, and General Popper has received orders from above to conduct a pincer attack against the bridge at Somme. Now, intriguingly, often when we read American reports about this action as it moves through the woods where the Americans have taken cover, we're told that this is a counterattack. I think a lot of that is because the command and control and cohesion of the German troops as they attempt to advance through those woods really just falls apart. These guys are really not combat trained troops, and consequently the Americans are seeing this as localized counterattacks at various levels. The other thing that we don't often think about is that the other end of the pincer movement against the bridge at Somme is the 107th Panzer Brigade, which has often been described as a mini panzer division, and that was attacking from the west against the bridge at Somme. You often hear stories about this isolated attack going in along the towpath with 5 or 6 Panthers attacking with the support of some Fallschirmjäger. And again, this is always, in my experience, been viewed as being a localized attack. But in fact, no. This is part of a planned corps level counterattack with the 59th Division coming in from the east and the 107th Panzer Brigade coming in from the west. The other way round, I lied. The problem is for Popper is that this attack goes into the woods just at the point that the British 15th, 19th Hussars are starting their attack. So let's go and see what happens there and what happens to that German counterattack against the bridge at Somme. You may recognise this spot because this is where Nick told you about Captain Jones and H Company going firm, having been involved in the ambush up on the outskirts of Best on the 17th. Now, on the 19th, down this road come the Cromwells of the 15th, 19th Royal Hussars, and then sweep off down south towards the bridge where they meet up with other troops which are cutting through the Ride further to the south. In doing so, they've swept across the northern edge of the Sonja woods and are now sweeping down across the western face. At that point in time, the Germans, who'd been counter-attacking as part of the 59th Infantry Division's attack towards Son Bridge, are cut off by this armoured force that's amazingly appeared behind them and sliced through their lines of advance and their lines of communication. At the same time, US glider forces are sweeping through from the east and Son, and the German attack is trapped between a hammer and an anvil and literally falls apart. These troops, who have been reduced to around 150 men per battalion, are not going in and attacking in a coherent manner. We've seen the issues that the Americans have had going through these woods, and that problem is compounded even further with troops who are of a poorer quality like these German troops. As I said, these are guys with an average age of 34 who have come from guard duty and coalescence and been stationed as guarding the coast in Norway and then around Dunkirk. These are not hardened combat troops. These are men who are barely trained, and that certainly shows here. Of a force of somewhere around 1,000 to 1,200 men who attacked as part of 59th Division's pincer movement with 107 Panzer Brigade, over 500 are captured, and many more graves are found later when Best eventually falls at the end of October. This was the attack that made sure that General Popper's 59th Infantry Division was no longer capable of launching attacks again, and why it went firm in Best and simply took up a defensive stance for the rest of that battle. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to try and follow this ride all the way down to see if we can get to the canal to see where they ended up by the bridge. Around lunchtime on the 19th of September, the 15th, 19th Royal Hussars had attacked down southwards across the western face of the Sonja woods, and this was the point where they met the Wilhelmina Canal. You can see the new bridge behind me, but looking through that you can see the position of the old bridge there. That had been destroyed and was slumped into the river. At this point in time, the Hussars and the supporting airborne troops turned right to the west, moved to the old road, and then swung north with a view to attacking into Best to clear the town. However, it was at that point that Son Bridge once again cast its long shadow over events happening over here near Best. News came through that a German attack was being made from the southeast against Son Bridge, and the Hussars were called away rapidly to go and defend against that. Without armoured support, the US airborne troops, lightly armed as they were, decided that they were not going to push on into Best against what they anticipated to be very strong opposition, considering what they'd experienced over the past 2 days. Nick, it's interesting. I've been talking about the King's Royal Hussars, you've been talking about the US Paras, but it looks that when they hook up, that's probably the point when the lost platoon becomes unlost and rescued from the clutches of the evil Germans. Yeah, it looks like Wysibowski goes into the bag on the 19th of September, and there's fighting to the north as that's happening, and that's probably the beginning of the attack from the tanks, the combined attack from the tanks and the parachute infantry. Yeah. So they push down, and probably as part of that drive, Wysibowski is freed. He's lucky actually. When he goes in the bag, the only thing that saves him and his men from probably being killed almost on the spot was the fact that they had a couple of German medics with them. Right. And the medics, of course, attested to the way that they've been behaving or whatever, and managed to the way they've been treated. From being shot, which I guess is a great outcome, right? It's certainly a good outcome for you if you're in that situation. Right. Well, interesting. So combined arms is happening, even if it's kind of impromptu. Seems that way.
The attack by the 15th, 19th King's Royal Hussars put an end to the German offensive capability, but the withdrawal of the tanks also drew the teeth of the US plans to capture Best, and they came to nothing. A lull in the fighting now occurred, with both sides facing an impasse, neither strong enough to launch an attack. The first phase in the battle for Best was over, but the delay was to be a brief one. 2 days later, on the 21st of September, elements of the British 46th Brigade arrived on the south side of the canal. These troops were from the 15th Scottish Division, part of 12th Corps, which was attempting to advance on the 30th Corps left flank, but this, so far, had come to very little. German defenders at Giel and at Lommel, where they'd originally attacked before Market Garden began in order to pull German troops into the battle, had proved incredibly hard nuts to crack. Now the division was shifting eastwards, intent on crossing the Wilhelmina Canal at Best and heading north towards Boxtel and Sir Hertogenbosch. Much to their surprise, the bridge at Best was damaged and also seemed to be abandoned by both sides. In truth, it was actually in a no man's land that only occasional patrols were visiting. On the positive side, the bridge was found to be crossable by infantry who were prepared to wade across the partially submerged structure. That evening at 2200 hours, the Seaforth Highlanders crossed the river and, taking up positions 200 yards to the north, they blocked any German attempts to attack south, and that allowed the Royal Engineers to put in a 40-ton Bailey bridge to the east of the original bridge. The following morning, the Glasgow Highlanders attacked on a 3-company frontage into Best. On the 22nd of September, the Glasgow Highlanders attacked north into the town of Best. Behind me, we have the modern road that runs parallel with the existing railway line. And to the south, A Company were attacking onto the embankment across open fields where the German defenders used the advantage of their height to literally stop that attack within 200 yards of it starting off. The church in Best, across to the north, allowed artillery spotters and mortar spotters to bring fire in and pin down A Company all day, and it was only at night that it was able to withdraw and reform. Further to the north, B Company moved across. Their objective had been to take the church, but the commanding officer of the battalion saw that A Company was broken down and attempted to support them by shifting B Company's axis of advance to the left to attack a cement works, a cement factory, which stood on this spot here. It's very difficult to imagine now exactly what that was like. On maps it's variously described as a stoneworks, a brick factory, a cement factory. What's clear is that this was a very large area of ground with numerous buildings, and that the Germans had turned it into a mini fortress, effectively a tiny Stalingrad, if you like, of a factory complex. And B Company, moving across to here, bumped into that position and were unable to make any headway against the defenders, who were standing proud as a fortress ahead of the main German defensive line along the railway and railway line. Interestingly, C Company had been moving up the main road towards the point where the US airborne troops had ambushed the Germans on the very first day of the attack. Unfortunately, the regiment had had terrible casualties in hard fighting around Giel, just 15-20 miles to the west of here, and had suffered a very large number of casualties, and the replacements who had joined the battalion were really not up to the job, and their attack ground to a halt as they tried to clear the houses. Although frankly, you know you're on the side of the angels when the troops are suffering because of their refusal to throw grenades into the houses because of the Dutch civilians who were sheltering in there. However, with C Company heading up the road directly to the north, and B Company veering across to hit the cement works, D Company, that had been held in reserve, were pushed through and went straight through the middle to take the church in a key position in the centre of the town, effectively with the right and left hand at the attack, palming off the enemy and creating an opening in their ranks that allowed D Company to move straight through onto their objective with minimal casualties. With the development that's happened in Best since the Second World War, it's very, very difficult to show on film exactly where troops were moving and where troops were deployed. What we can say for sure is that the Germans were using the railway embankment in order to give them a fabulous field of fire across the fields to the south at Best and down towards the bridge. And behind me we can see what passes for a railway embankment. It is not the highest railway embankment in the world, but here we must be seeing it 5 or 6 feet high, and it's certainly high enough for troops to be moving about freely in this area, troops to be dug in on top of there, putting fire in on other troops who are way down below them in the fields, let's say even 2 or 3 meters below. It means that you've got freedom of movement here, whereas the Scottish units advancing across those open fields have absolutely exposed for the whole of their advance, and that was why any attacks across the open against the railway embankment came to the halt that they did. Now further to the north, as we move up towards the station, the railway embankment is a lot less pronounced, but you have still got the railway line as a distinct open area so that troops can defend the railway line with open ground to their front. The exception was the cement factory, which sat to the other side of the tracks, but both German, American and British accounts say that that had been fortified as a fortress. So we can see that that was a forward position where the Germans were expecting to have, well, at least 270-degree defence, if not 360 degrees. So once again we can see that this railway embankment provided the Germans with at least a line upon which to anchor their defence, and they did that throughout the whole of Best from north to south. On the morning of the 23rd of September, the Glasgow Highlanders are holding a position with their front line facing the Germans across the railway line. To my left here, and on the left of their position, Company B are holed up in what's variously described as an agricultural building, but also a clog factory, where this strange edifice is here. To their north, facing the station, which we can see in the background up there to our left, which is the large brand new building, was D Company, and to the north of that, on the crossroads at the heart of the town, was C Company. B Company were much reduced in strength due to their failed attacks on the cement factory just 300-400 yards to the south. They were reduced to 2 reduced strength platoons, and all of them were inside this small semi-industrial building. The Germans, based in the buildings just across the road, almost a grenade's throw away, were aware of this, and they, taking advantage of the early morning hours, crept across, threw their grenades through the windows and killed or took prisoner almost everybody in B Company. Only 6 men were able to retreat to the northeast to the church in the heart of Best. This is how close fighting was between the two forces. With B Company being overrun, C and D Company were now coming under attack from both the front, the flanks and the rear, and it was necessary for them to withdraw back towards the church in the centre of the town. A counter-attack was thrown in against the cemetery to the southwest by the carrier platoon, but that was driven back by what's referred to as Spandau fire. By the afternoon of the 22nd of September, St Adolphus here was casting a watchful eye over the Glasgow Highlanders, because their perimeter had shrunk into a tiny area in the centre of the town. But interestingly, to the far north, the King's Own Scottish borderers had advanced through the Zonshire Heider woods and moved out into a position to capture the village of Steinweg off to the northwest, and they were attempting to fight their way into Best, clearing out pockets of Germans as they went, and that in itself would shift the axis of the whole attack from south to north to east to west, and that line along that railway line became even more firmly entrenched for both sides as the battle for Best bedded down into a war of attrition. This really was the high water mark for both the Germans and the 46th Brigade in Best, because the plan now changed. The British decided that rather than pushing to the west to clear out Best, the key thing was to drive north and to push forward to Boxtel so the shoulders of the attack could be pushed out and that 30 Corps would be protected by troops moving north on their flanks. As such, the position in Best was allowed to degenerate into small unit combat over the next 6 weeks, and it was only on the 24th of October that a final attack was made, only to discover that the Germans had abandoned their positions and Best was under the command of the Scottish 15th Division. And that marked the end of the fighting in the area of Best. So here we are, back where it all began, the bridge at Somme. And of course, the thing that we've discovered about the Battle of Best is that the entire event was driven by this bridge here. When this bridge was not intact, Best became important. Once this bridge was intact, Best ceased to become important, and so it continued. And yet, throughout the week following the 17th of September, the battle for Best sucked in more and more troops until it was effectively a brigade-size action, with the 15th Scottish Division getting so entrenched and tied up in there that it was sucking in more and more men and more assets. But the issue for us, Nick, is what have we discovered? What do you feel that we've found out on this journey?
Well, there's nothing like walking the ground, is there, to understand how a battle plays out, and it's interesting to see the different lines of attack that are going on here. You look at it on a map, you see the Americans are pushing southwest towards the bridge. They want to capture the bridge, which they believe is intact, of course. The guy down at the bridge, Wizabowski, and his lost platoon, they know that the bridge of Best has been blown up, but the actual other commanders don't know this. He's isolated.
Yeah.
Nobody else knows that that bridge is blown. They keep pushing on that bridge. They're pushing southwest to get to the bridge. The Germans, as you said yesterday, are trying to do their pincer movement with the attack here at Somme and pushing towards Somme from Best. So they're almost going over the top of the Americans.
Yeah.
Which is why they get in behind the Americans and infiltrate so easily into their lines.
Yeah.
It's like so many of these actions, when you get on the ground you realise how messy it is close up, and that always is my takeaway from these things. It's when you get down close, we think as wargamers that you can see in straight lines for miles. We know as battlefield walkers that you can see 50 yards in each direction, and after that it gets difficult.
Yeah, and certainly that situation is amplified when we're looking at fighting that predominantly took place in a great big area of fairly close woodland.
Yeah, the potentials for games are interesting, and that's our next challenge.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly that challenge begins now. How do we turn what we've discovered at Best into a chain of command action for the tabletop? Well, we're going to go away and maybe have a few more beers to stimulate the little grey cells and get our minds moving on that.
Path that they take, and I'm going to take it now. It's only half a mile to the trees. See you there. Have I really got to do this?
Yeah, get on with it.
It's a long way.
Get on with it.
Still going?
Yes.